excited to be with you all this afternoon. I am going to be practicing my newscaster skills, so I'm in person, and our amazing panelists are going to be on the screen. So, are we there? Avni and Chelsea? Okay, great. Great. Well, today we're going to be talking about building your company for the new era of work, but most importantly, culture. Reactions to the great resignation that raise your hand if you are a victim of or a part of right now, right? There's a lot of change in the talent world, and I think if anything in the last year we've learned a lot about the humanness of work and the importance of being a human at work. So I am joined by Chelsea and Avni on screen. Hi everyone, can you see us? We can hear you too.
Great. Hi there. I can see you.
So we're going to start with Chelsea because if you've looked at Chelsea's LinkedIn, she has some amazing accolades related to her role at Iron Galaxy, over 250 employees, average tenure is 5 years. That is an amazing, I think it honestly deserves a round of applause. 250 employees, average tenure over 5 years. So I want to kick us off, Chelsea. Top 3 tips. How did you do that? What went into that? Yes.
Yeah, so, and we hired 100 of those people over COVID, which I think is really pretty remarkable too. And we haven't been losing women with the big she session either. And I really think it boils down to something extremely simple, which is being people focused. That is the way that you retain talent. People are one of our main values at Iron Galaxy, and they're one of our main assets. And it's not just a talking point, it's something we have to live every day. We have to make sure we're really listening to our employees. And like you said, treating them like human beings, not treating them like cells in a spreadsheet. This goes a long way. This takes a lot of emotional effort as well. A lot of emotional effort for your managers, for your executives to put in to really actively care. And you do have to keep that keen eye on your culture, especially now that we're in the hybrid, we're remote, we're COVID, post-COVID, wherever we are environment. I think it's easy to think you're doing enough for your culture and to let it erode or to get it comfortable in patterns. And so you really need to be intentional and deliberate to keep it strong at all levels of the organization. And then the connections are paramount, and making sure you're finding ways for your employees to build relationships, because part of the strength of the culture definitely had come from those water cooler talks or whatever, being in the lunchroom, and not just from the work. People are excited and stimulated by their tasks and their projects, but it's really the relationships that keep people happy and wanting to work together and wanting to keep coming to work with you. So you have to find ways to help people find those, even in a remote environment, and to foster just things beyond work and foster the casual experiences.
So Chelsea, as a quick follow-up to that, what do your employees say? Over 250 employees, Chicago and Orlando. What do they say? What do they love most about working at Iron Galaxy and with you and your team?
Yeah, I think there are a few things they love. I just did an orientation actually today, and each one of us, we have 3 partners in the company. Adam Boyes is my co-CEO, Dave Lang is the founder. We take the time to meet with all of the new employees. So I think people recognize that we get to be a face. People enjoy working on new challenges. We work on a lot of different code bases. We work on business to business. We work on our own IP. So there are a lot of different learning opportunities for people. And they do enjoy the cultural things. We're going to have a Halloween costume contest. We're doing Inktober. We try to build those connections. So I think people see that effort and they do really respond to that. And I get feedback that people really like it.
So the culture, a big
culture.
Part of that is the culture.
And that's intentional. And again, the evolving, the changing work, that the work isn't always the same.
Right.
That's important to people too.
Right. Thank you. Avni, good afternoon, good to see you. So,
Yeah.
CEO of Shellman, over 300 employees, a lot of growth in the last year. I know there's probably a lot of leaders in the room that would love to know about your growth in the last year, what's on the horizon for Shellman, and then also what went into your culture this last couple of years, and is there any lessons learned that you'd be willing to share from? I think we can all learn from failure and pivoting quickly.
Sure. Well, I echo a lot of what Tracy said. We have seen significant growth actually in 2020. We're over 350 people, but 145 people were just added this year. And so we've seen significant growth. We actually just went through a transaction as well. So we have a large investment from a private equity firm. So lots of changes, a lot of excitement as well, which again, feeds into the culture as well. As Chelsea said, people like to be in places where they can do different things. And we're not a sexy industry. When you talk about audit, people want to run away. You hear things like, looking at controls in and out. It's not exciting. So for us to be able to provide new arenas and ways for people to do more exciting things, it definitely kind of gets them on board from a retention perspective. But the virtual environment, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about lessons learned. We pivoted to this virtual world March 9th of 2020. And this was a major change for us because we are a people business. We're not making widgets or gadgets, or we're not building SaaS platforms. We're used to either being in an office, hotel rooms, planes, at client sites, and not in our home offices day in and day out. And, you've probably heard, COVID was this largest experiment for virtual work for our industry specifically, accounting and cybersecurity. And now I'm not sure if we're ever going to be able to kind of truly return to normal. I recently just sent out a survey to my clients. We have 800 clients, and these are the blue chip clients, the Amazons, the Googles of the world, and a lot of technology companies, asking them how many of them would like us to return back to site. And actually 85% said we were really happy with the type of remote work plan that we had. So we've decided to create our own new normal in any case. We have taken several of our lessons learned and implemented them, the last 18 months. So right now we're in the works of adoption of a work from anywhere program that's going to allow our team members to choose where they want to live and where they want to work. And we've had several people who have taken advantage of that inside the US, outside the US, different.
Wow.
And, we plan to continue this remote auditing where we can. And, we do have to have conversations with regulatory bodies, of course, encouraging them to keep necessary safety measures. But, as things evolve, we're going to as well. The other thing that we're definitely going to keep is the increased flexibility during the workday. I am a mom of 3, 2 of them who are in school and 1 who was born during the pandemic. So we know how important it is for our team members and family to really need that extra time with their kids, their students, online learning or elder care. And we're going to continue to do that. And the other thing that came to us during COVID was our team members wanted to make sure that their home environment was as comfortable as their offices. And so we made sure we provided them, work from home reimbursements. But I would say the most important thing was, the last 18 months created different kind of threats for all of us. So we're making sure some of the lessons learned were around mental health and stress. So we have this increased focus on health, mindfulness, and really creating a positive team member experience through a new platform that's going to be coming out as well. So some of our lessons learned.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I would challenge you. I think cybersecurity and auditing is very sexy. It's one of the most in-demand skill sets in Orlando. So stick with it for sure.
Thanks.
So we have, in my role at the Orlando Economic Partnership, I get to hear a lot of best practices from employers and also a lot of challenges that they're facing. And something some of our local employers are facing is actually losing remote talent, so their own talents at home, and they're losing them to other major communities at much higher salaries. I know that's just kind of a needle in a haystack when it comes to a really complex challenge, but one of the things that we always come back to with that is, what does that look like for an employee? What does growth for an employee look like? So kind of twofolded question. We've got employers and talent in the audience. So employers would definitely want to hear your thoughts on how to combat that, how to ensure that you're retaining your talent here locally. But as the individual, when these opportunities are presented to them, how do you grow in a virtual environment? You're having those water cooler conversations we talked about. Senior leadership may not be seeing you as often as they once did. Chelsea, maybe we'll start with you on that employer rebuttal to that challenge, and then Avni, go to you on the individual talent and what they should be doing to be noticed in a virtual world.
Yeah, I think regardless of whether it's virtual or in person, we really need to work with our employees to create the right growth paths for them. I think traditionally we've tried to fit round pegs into square holes, and the only way to progress was if you go into management or leadership. Those were all the traditional areas for high performers. And something we've found is we really want to empower people to make decisions about their growth with their managers. So we're not telling them what's the right way to grow. We're giving them a lot of options. And we really look at it as more of branches of a tree or a path that you go along, and not a ladder to climb that you maybe fall off a rung, or there's a rung that's not good for you and suddenly that's a demotion. We really have deep conversations with our employees about what is interesting to them. And we know that when we put the employees in places that they enjoy, they're going to do their best, and we're going to get the most out of them anyway. And that might not be management, or it might not be hands-on keyboard. People have different skills. So we really want to make sure we're keeping people excelling where they are happy and giving them the responsibility they're comfortable with. We also have a program where maybe you are running a project, you're the project lead, you take on that stress, you take on that management responsibility, but it doesn't mean that has to be your role every time. And then that doesn't equate to any change in your salary or demotion. We just recognize that maybe you want to then hone some technical skills on another project, or take a little breath and step back from some of the overwhelming responsibility, because the people management side of things, especially with the mental health and with all of the challenges that we're having and trying to keep the culture alive and flourishing, that it can be very rigorous and emotionally taxing. Like I mentioned before, we want to recognize and give people space to grow and still take a breath along in their growth.
I love that. I think the short answer for that might be a stretch assignment, right, Chelsea? Like, we've been talking a lot about just giving individuals a chance. I think in the last year, we've all learned that maybe we want to try new things, and maybe, like you said, there isn't one path. So what little stretch assignments can we throw in there and create some new opportunities? And a lot of it comes back to leadership, exactly what you said, and really ensuring that managers are spending that one-on-one time and hearing. I think a lot of times we know we don't have a direct answer, but as long as we feel heard as employees, it goes a long way, right?
And I think allowed to make mistakes as well and learn from them. That's really important.
Fail fast and pivot, yes. Avni, what would your advice be to employees looking for growth in a virtual world?
Sure. I think one is social capital is so important in a virtual environment. So when you think about it from a career development perspective, it's the resources that are available to you through professional connection, built on your network, diversity, values, sense of belonging, trust, reciprocity. I mean, there's a lot, it could be bonding, bridging, or linking you with other people inside, but also outside the company. And I know it's been really hard during COVID, especially, or, post-COVID, where we're going to be in this virtual environment. But, having social capital affects your ability to ask for and receive help and to gain access to opportunities like promotion and raises and better positions and those stretch assignments that you talked about. So we've heard remote workers are so much more prone to isolations, and us as employers need to be very intentional, as Chelsea said, about developing their interpersonal connections, their new skills, outside the team and organization. I'll say the second thing is, it's very easy in a remote working situation to feel isolated. And I mentioned it to you. That was one of the major issues we saw with our organization and our people. And that's why we kind of put that wellness program together. And they came to us and they said, we're completely siloed. But, in any healthy remote company, that simply should not be the case. There should be an increased amount of collaboration. And so I know it's true. A level of autonomy is important for remote work. You need to be capable of motivating yourself. You need to complete your tasks. But if you feel like you need help from a colleague, don't be afraid to ask. And if you're part of a team that has a positive company culture, highly recommend, as any employee, that's one thing you look for when seeking, a virtual job. More than likely, anyone on that team is going to be happy to help you. And it's better to ask than stay stuck on a problem. And I've noticed, the harder thing is sometimes, when I went to the office, I could just go next door. We could brainstorm, we could solve a problem, and we kind of move on. Sometimes in this virtual environment, it's hard. And the last thing I'm going to say, it's the most important thing, and you'll probably hear this from me, and you probably are going to feel like this is a theme, but taking care of yourself. When working in a remote environment, you can get caught up in work and forget to take care of the most important asset, which is you. And it's surprisingly easy to forget to stand up every once in a while or even eat lunch. I can tell you, I inadvertently got into a habit of not eating lunch and working 10 hours straight with no breaks. And it's not that I'm a workaholic as much as I just got involved with what I was doing that I forgot to set my own boundaries. So there's probably so many more, but those three things, will definitely keep you safe.
I love it. And we've shared, I have a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old, so I have definitely made an effort to take better care of myself. Well, with that, I want to open it up for questions from the group, if there are any, before we kind of wrap it up. Yes. Thank you.
This way, our remote presenter. I'll hold it.
My question is, how do you address pay with competing against other cities with higher income versus Orlando, which we considered lower compared to like a San Francisco?
Chelsea, could you hear that? Or Avni, either one of you.
Yeah, so the way we've always looked at pay is we don't set it differently for Chicago or Orlando. We have basically our Iron Galaxy standard. We know we can't compete with California. We know we can't compete with some of the big coastal salaries. So that's where we really try to make our culture, our benefits, our opportunities for growth and things that people, projects that people can work on, have those things help differentiate us, because we know we can't compete solely on the monetary side of things.
That's an interesting approach. I didn't realize same salaries for Chicago and Orlando. Avni, do you have reactions? Yeah.
It's the nature of business. Money is always going to be a staple in exchange for effort. So staying competitive of our salary offerings as well as our bonus structure is a high priority. But, as Chelsea said, I think it's equally important to provide our employees with genuine opportunities to nurture their careers. And this doesn't mean like cookie cutter career tracks or higher pay. In my view, it's, making sure that we're able to provide them opportunities to work in an environment that empowers them, flexibility to showcase individual skills, making sure that they're free from micromanagement, finding things that truly motivates them for the highest quality of services. So I agree, it's very hard for us to be able to compete, but to make sure that our employees are empowered from the beginning to do what they want to do, I think it makes for a very different picture that we can pitch, to people coming in or those that could potentially thinking of leaving us.
Absolutely.
We have a
Good
question
Thank
here
you.
and here.
Yes.
Yeah, hello. Just a question to both of you. So working remotely is something new to our corporate world. And I'm curious what challenge you have not anticipated that you have to deal with, and how did you go about it?
Sure, I can take that. For us, it was definitely the isolation piece. I mean, we're a professional services firm where, like I mentioned, people are at clients day in and day out. And so we prepared for everything else, right? We prepared for making sure that we had collaboration. We had Slack, and we had Google, and we had Zoom, and we had stand-up daily calls. But that isolation really affected our people, and we didn't prepare for it. And it probably took us a good 3 to 4 months to make sure that we could put a program together to allow people to have a way to kind of vent and have a way to not be working 10 to 12 hours a day. So that was something we didn't expect. And it took us a few months to actually, implement, and, it's iterative right now. We probably have to change every 4 or 5 months, as we learn new challenges from this environment.
You had a question over here.
Sure.
Yes, I do. So working virtually, I think, really presents a unique set of challenges, especially for minorities and LGBT groups. And so how do you recommend making those groups feel more welcome within a virtual environment, given that they are experiencing maybe different microaggressions or issues within the workplace in a way that's authentic and isn't placating to maybe their minority status?
I think we would run into those issues whether it's virtual or in person, unfortunately. So to me, it's all about fostering a community of respect. Honestly, we've actually had some of our LGBTQ folks say that they felt more comfortable in a virtual environment. We've had some people someone undergoing transition, some other things that were more comfortable for them to be able to do at home and not in an in-person environment. But I think the main thing is just making sure that all of the voices get to be heard, that we have avenues for to make sure that voices are heard in meetings, that we have people from a variety of backgrounds who are on all of our projects. We have people from a variety of backgrounds who make decisions. We also hired a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility program lead this year. So we had someone who was 100% of their time focused on looking for ways to hold ourselves accountable and to create better programs and better systems. I think it's also just, again, I think I said this, fostering a culture of respect, where we are listening. We really want to listen to everyone, regardless of who they are. We're also very intentional about who speaks in a public arena. In our company meetings, for instance, right, we want to make sure that we're hearing from a variety of voices and people can see themselves represented and know, luckily, that they're not the only, I'm not the only white female at the company. There are other people like me there. And I think having people be able to see that gives some people also a little more courage to speak up.
Thank you. Are we out of time, or are we okay?
I think we have time.
One more. Okay, go ahead.
Chelsea, this is kind of along the same lines. You talked about, how people handle kind of interactions internally within the company. And last night we were at a conference where Gary Kelly, the CEO of Southwest Airlines, spoke, and he spoke about civility within your company. And it kind of led to a discussion on kind of grace between employees. When you get offense, how do you handle that so that you can work together and you can thrive as a company? And so I was just wondering, it's probably along the same lines, but how do you instill a culture of grace within your company for your employees?
Yeah, that's a really fun and interesting question because we make video games. So a lot of what we talk about is subjective. What is fun? Does this HUD accomplish this goal? Even if we have data to back it up, it still ends up being subjective. So there can be a lot of heated discussion, right, just around what we're doing and have nothing to do with the differences that people may have. But I think we all need to have respect for one another. And I think understanding that people are coming at ideas with good intentions. And when we see these creative ideas, it's easy to get ego involved, but you have to take this step back and realize that the other person is also just trying to do the best by the product. So we have a lot of conversations about that and a lot of facilitating people in conversations, a lot of constant feedback. We moved to really a feedback in the moment process. So we can just pull someone aside after a meeting, and I've seen this happen. It's like, hey, you came at that a little strong. You came at that issue a little strong. Let's. I feel sometimes like good management is parenting. I'll say things like, let's make our emotions work for you, right? Because I think we need more of that intentional conversation around not just respectful conversations in the workplace nowadays, but just respectful discourse with difference of opinion in our society. And so we as businesses are trying to help people bridge that gap that they maybe aren't even getting in their private life of respectful listening discourse.
I love that. And Brene Brown has a very fun term for that, the rumble, like a very vulnerable conversation at work where you really lean in, you respect the others, you show your vulnerability, but it's a tough conversation. She calls it a rumble. So with that, I do think we are out of time. Give me a hand with thanking Chelsea and Avni. Thank you both so much. I heard amazing themes, and it kind of brought us all full circle with starting with the humanness of work, but really paying attention to our leaders, being clear, being kind, and rumbling when we need to, a little bit too, right? So thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.